Real talk. No bull. Real talk. We're putting it all on the table. You know what to do.
Alrighty, episode 5, here we are. Five. And we have a guest today. We have Rachel Mellor. Is that right?
That'll do.
That'll do.
Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for coming, yep.
Yeah.
Yep, there we go. All right, I've already stuffed up, but here we go.
Yeah, man, not at all.
All right, so pretty much in a nutshell, Rachel's a local psychologist who has worked in the industry for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And she works with helping address and maintaining good mental health and well-being amongst all her clients.
It's awesome.
Yep. So
Love it.
we are ready to really just get stuck into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, Rach, just tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay. So like you said, I've been a psychologist for the last 30 years. 30-ish years.
30-ish?
30-ish years. First of all, I was, I suppose, a prison psychologist, corrections psychologist.
Oh.
First, from the UK, obviously. And then when I came to Australia, I worked in secure mental health units, and then went out on my own to private practice. So now, really, I suppose the bread and butter of what I do now is a lot about community well-being, a lot about depression, anxiety, mood disorders, PTSD, that type of mental health concern.
Did the working in corrections really set you up for that sort of field of work?
It's very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah.
I think in corrections, there isn't that much focus on mental health, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I've
heard this before.
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on rehabilitation, but not necessarily on mental health.
Yeah.
And, well, you know, there is an argument to say that prison isn't necessarily the best place for people with mental health.
No, I wouldn't imagine so. Being cooped up in a box all day, that can't be good for you.
Yeah.
Anybody really, can it? No. All right, so shall we jump into some questions?
Go for it, my dude.
Yeah. All right. So I guess in society, we're coming a long way, right? In terms of, say, 20 years ago when we didn't really talk about mental health, and men's mental health, even females' mental health. But why is talking about mental health still such a taboo type subject? Even now, like we're getting better, but why is it still such a thing not to really talk about it?
Look, you make a good point because we are getting better.
Yeah.
You know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it just was not spoken about whatsoever. 20, 30 years ago, there was hints of things that we were starting to talk about with regard to mental health, but there's still only hints of things. Although it's got better and it's not as taboo anymore, there are still things that I suppose society target as male and female. Yeah, so when we look at male mental health, we look at, I suppose, and why that's taboo, we look at things like talking about health, yeah, and males aren't necessarily great at talking about things.
Yeah.
If females love talking, and we can talk about anything, females, but men, I'm going to make a generalisation, this isn't all men, but some men, most men, just don't like talking about it because of, I suppose, the masculinity that society puts on that. Yeah. So, you know, for even in this day and age, society will kind of put genders in specific pockets. And although it's not as bad as what it was, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it still happens, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's about stamping that out, basically. It's about going, do you know what? It's okay to talk about this.
Yeah, 100%.
And it doesn't matter what somebody feels. It doesn't matter if someone judges you. That's not on you. That's on them.
Yeah.
If they want to judge, then that's fine. You don't have any control over that. But what you do have control over is your own mental health and your own well-being and what you can do about that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. I guess, yeah, like being a talker, that would be like saying that somebody's sort of sitting within their feminine, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of men wouldn't want to admit that they have a bit of a feminine side to them, where they could open up and talk about their feelings and stuff like that. I'm quite lucky to have many men around us that we are very open and we talk a lot. Good. So we all understand that, you know, you're not taking anything away from your masculinity by just being able to talk about your feelings. Yep. So yeah, it's I think there's still a lot of stigma out there. There's still a lot of guys who they'll say, "Oh no, I'm good, I'm fine, it's all right," but you can see that there's something going on there.
Yeah,
but
look,
yeah,
there's also a lot of men that know that there is something wrong, but they just can't put their finger on it.
Yeah.
As well, it's like
it's about being able to vocalize it in a way that is able to be understood, right?
That somebody else understands that. You know, you, anybody. We all understand how we feel ourselves, but then trying to express that to somebody else can be really, really difficult.
Most definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I'm just still thinking of a few other things that you mentioned before, but anyway, with the ideas around masculinity, how's that made it harder for blokes to open up?
Look, I think it's so hard anyway. Yeah, it's so hard anyway. And then when you're fighting against the issue of what you perceive as acceptable as a guy and what you perceive as acceptable as a female, as a girl, it's difficult for women too. Don't get me wrong, you know,
100%.
like for us to say, "Hey, I'm not coping." Again, the society says, you know, you work, you take care of the kids, you do this, you do that, you know. So it's not. Men really find it really difficult, but women, I suppose, also find it difficult as well. And then, look, the way that men communicate with women and the way that women communicate with men as well, that could probably be a little bit of an issue too.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're so close with people.
Yeah.
You know, whether your partner, your wife, your husband, your other half, whatever term of endearment you want to throw at your partner. But it's really difficult to go to your partner and go, "Hey, I'm not good."
Do you reckon that's like from a fear of judgment?
Hopefully your partner wouldn't judge, but you might judge yourself.
Well, yeah.
It might be a self-judgment thing rather than a partner judgment thing. You know, it's like, well, I can't show that I'm weak.
Yeah.
Potentially. You know, my partner is doing this, and this, and like, I can't even do that. You know, the stereotypes that you make, your own self-judgment, can have an effect on how you communicate with people too.
So in that pattern, like, what are some of the things that we see happening with men when they don't learn to deal with their emotions properly?
Okay, well, look, not just men, but when we don't learn to deal with emotions.
People in general.
People in
general.
But when we don't learn to deal with emotions properly, a whole lot of avoidance happens. But if I'm specifically focusing kind of from a male gender, we tend to do avoidance behaviours such as drugs, alcohol, getting straight into work. Yeah, all of a sudden, you're like, I'm at work at 6:00 and I don't come home till 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, it's you push everything into work, but you're not really as productive at work. Yeah, and you kind of don't understand that. It's like, I'm pushing everything in, but I'm not as productive, and why am I getting that feedback? Yeah, and it's potentially an avoidance technique.
Yeah.
You know, who wants to kind of own up to the fact that I'm not feeling great?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I should be feeling great.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with my life.
Yeah.
I've got kids, I've got a great partner, I've got this, I've got that, I've got everything I need and I want. Why am I sad, or why am I anxious, or why don't I feel okay?
Yeah.
And probably don't feel okay because of the pressures.
Yeah.
You know, men do have a lot of pressures.
That's right. Yeah, and I guess it's kind of that whole thing of not wanting to seem weak either. Because as a male, you know, and as a provider, you feel like if you're not sitting within that role properly, or you don't feel like you're providing properly or adequately, then I guess that's a really hard thing to just say that, you know, I'm not doing well there.
Yeah, and also your perception of that provision may be totally different.
That's right.
From somebody else's perception.
That's right. It's like I come home in the afternoons and my wife will say, "Oh, sorry, the house isn't tidy," and I'll say, "Are you happy? Have you had a good day?" And she'll say, "Yeah, it's not been bad." I'll say, "Sweet, that's all that matters." I don't care if there's a couple of things on the floor. That doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
But to her, she's been sitting there going, "Oh, I haven't been able to get to that. I haven't been able to do that." You know. But then I come home and it's not a problem to me. It's just a problem to her.
Yeah.
You know, she's kind of worked that up to be a problem when it isn't a problem.
But that's a perfect example of self-judgment.
That's right. Yeah. And I suppose we do a lot of that, right? Like everybody does a lot of that within themselves, with all varieties of things. Yeah.
Look, self-judgment, I suppose I don't want to portray it as a totally negative thing either. Because self-judgment, I suppose, also shapes our values and our morals about things as well. You know, when we kind of want to have quite high values, quite high morals, or whatever standard that is, we will kind of, I suppose, judge ourselves on whether we achieve those morals and values. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be a negative, but when it comes to mental health, it more often than not is.
Those high morals, they need to be attainable, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
can't,
that is another issue.
Yeah.
You can have morals and values, but your expectations,
That's right.
they've got to be realistic.
yeah, you can't set unrealistic expectations for yourself, or else you're going to constantly feel that disappointment all the time.
We do.
Yeah.
You know, we do set unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, part of my own sort of self-development sort of quest over the last sort of 12 years was releasing myself within the expectations, so that I wasn't constantly feeling those points of disappointment all the time.
And that pressure.
Yeah, and that pressure to sort of live up to those expectations I'd set on myself, because tomorrow's a new day and yesterday's gone, and you know, you live for today and you know, you plan for tomorrow.
In theory.
Yeah, that's right. Cool.
But with like statistic wise, with men and women and men, depression, anxiety are shocking. But with the suicide rate, when it comes to men, why is the suicide rate high? Or what's your perception on why you seem to think that the suicide rate is higher in men?
There's a lot of research, or there has been a lot of research over the years that state that suicide is more prevalent with men than it is with women. For many different reasons as well. You know, in the fact of with men, because their tendency from a research perspective as well is the avoidance element, which then involves the drug element. That there's an element of misadventure possibly that's associated with that. So when we say there's higher rates of suicide within men with depression, then some of those rates of that attribute to those suicides are accidental deaths, which some of the research has included in the suicide figures. So when we look at research from I suppose the psychology aspect of it, we've always got to read what the research actually has looked into. But saying that, there is a high suicide rate within men with regard to depression. And why that is, Look,
Why do you think it's so high in Australia and New Zealand compared to other parts of the world? Like New Zealand and Australia have some of the highest stats for suicide per capita. So why do you think that could be? Like just from your own personal...
Would that be to do with the stigma element again? You know,
possibly. Like we're real blokey blokes in New Zealand and Aussie.
And coming from the UK as well, not different cultures in a sense. I've got to be careful what I say here.
No, it's all right. It's real talk.
Different cultures. I suppose when we come from the UK, I'm not saying there's more help out there for mental health, but it actually is more accepted than it is here.
Yeah.
I was quite shocked when I came here as to the lack of resources, perhaps, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
Lack of resources that were actually available just generally to mental health.
So Australia and New Zealand got a little bit of catching up to do, you reckon?
Little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think maybe from a cultural perspective, you know, kind of the tough masculinity.
She'll be right, mate.
Yeah.
She'll be right.
And look, don't get me wrong. When I compare to the UK, of course, we have the same cultural aspect or similar cultural aspects there, but I suppose it's more to do with the fact that we don't seem to have the resources here. And we don't seem to have the awareness. It was you
see you, buddy.
Thanks, mate. Cheers, pal.
You'd go into hospitals, you'd go into correctional centres, you'd go into your GP surgeries, you know, and you'd have posters and flyers and all sorts about mental health. Whereas here, it's like, oh, where are they then? You know, I work in a GP surgery now. I don't see them.
No, that's right. And so how young do you see the mental health issues? Like what's the age kind of like where you start seeing mental health issues start popping up within the kids?
Unfortunately, it's getting younger.
It's getting younger now?
It is, yeah. Now, that could be because we're more aware of it. Yeah, so don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, we're looking at a younger age demographic now, but is that because we're actually more aware and we're more open and we're talking about this? You know, I talk about it. I am a female, but my husband also talks about it to my son.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's young, but we talk about this kind of stuff. We bring it up. We kind of say, look, it's okay. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to feel down. Yeah, let's just put a label to it, but then let's not interpret it too much.
Do you reckon it's always been at the same kind of level, but at the like with social media and the internet now, like you're saying, with all that information at our hands, is it just more the fact that we can? I guess what am I trying to say? Like a lot of the stuff back in when my parents were younger, right? They didn't have the internet there to check out all this information. So are the stats kind of...
Different societal pressures, right?
Yeah, it is. Look, the stats now show a definite younger demographic.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely, as it was kind of 40, 50 years ago. It's a definite, or even when I was a kid, it's a definite younger demographic. Now, and look, we've got a lot of child psychologists out there. You know, that's relatively new in the form of psychology. That's relatively new, that to have a specific psychologist that's just aimed towards children. Yeah, you know, psychologists have been around for many, many years, but child psychologists are a relatively new field. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an impression about the type and age. You know, we're looking about potentially, I think it's about 20% of 10 to 14-year-olds will show some kind of mood disorder. So depressions, anxieties, stress.
Do you think like with like movies from Disney, like Inside Out and stuff like that, it gives kids more of the like, it kind of brings that sort of topic to the surface for kids, but then do you think like I guess, do they think they play on it a little bit because they're seeing it on TV, or there's a lot of movies now coming out with these undertones of mental health or certain aspects of mental health, and do you think that kind of plays a part, like what's the word I'm trying, like subconsciously for kids too?
Kind of goats them.
Yeah, possibly, but I think probably the internet has more of an impact than
Totally.
the films.
Yeah,
That
especially
was
within
my next one.
especially within the teenagers, right?
Yeah, I think, and also, and I found this too, that they're so young now. When we go to school and we have to log onto the internet and we have to have laptops and we have to do this and we have to do that, and we've got kids that are 6-7 years old that are having to have a laptop to go to school.
Yeah, I have a big problem with it.
So it's and although I'm not blaming school at all, but all that, and we're in a digital age, so they've got to learn to do that. I totally get all of that, but they've got because they know how to do that now, they've just got that free access to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as much as us as parents will go, right, you've got to sit at the dinner table and you can't go in your bedroom, and as much as we try and put that safety awareness around, it's still tricky to monitor.
Yeah.
And what sites they're going on, and at least when we were at school and we got bullied, because we've all got bullied. I'll put my hand up. I've got bullied.
Our last episode actually was
about bullying.
Right. Okay. There you go. There you go. So we've all got bullied, and it happens at school. And at least when I got bullied, I had home to go to.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that continued potential cyberbullying type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I keep
That's a big issue, man.
my kids off that.
That's massive.
Yeah, my kids are only young, and
Yeah.
we're very sort of strict on what they do and don't do on the internet. So, we're just trying to sort of keep them away from that sort of thing.
And that will affect mental. We know it's going to happen because that's the age in which they live. We've got AI
That's right.
specifically for engineers now. We're not going to need potentially structural engineers anymore because we've got an AI program that does it.
Yeah.
So I get that they have to have that access, but as a parent, it's tricky.
Yes.
And it does affect mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, what do you believe are the biggest pressures that men are facing right now in terms of mental health?
I think, look, from a pressure perspective, I think it's that family work-life balance. Because going back to what we were saying before about this stigma of, look, I'm going to say the traditional family, but the stigma of, as a male, I've got to be the breadwinner and I've got to earn the money and I've got to bring this in and, I've got a family to look after and all those judgments, whether that's self-judgment or societal judgment. But then at the same time, you've got to balance that out with life. Kids, life, friends. And to try and, we're all time poor. And to try and
I can put my hand up.
And to try and fit everything in within that specific amount of time, and to try and prioritize ourselves. Yeah. As men, as women, as people, we have to prioritize ourselves. Else nothing happens. Yeah. You all give, and you're not resetting. You're not recharging. And if you haven't recharged, then how are you going to be able to give?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then we've got this pressure that just continues to build up and up and up.
But how do you deal with those feelings of trying to make time for yourself, but you feel that kind of guilt, where it's like, oh, okay. For example, for me, it's like on a Sunday and a Monday I do meditation and yoga.
Yeah, good.
And every time I'm away from them, even though I could be grumpy at home anyway, but I still feel lousy for making that time for myself.
Why?
Because I feel like I'm not present. I feel like that I need to be around the kids 24/7.
Mm-hmm. And if you're around the kids 24/7, are you present around the kids 24/7?
Physically.
Yeah.
Not mentally.
No, because I know I certainly not. Yeah. So, but if you went and did yoga and meditation and time for yourself, then you came back to your kids, are you more present?
Yeah. But it still doesn't take away the fact that I feel guilty. I guess, how do you tell yourself that what you're doing is okay? It's okay to take time for yourself, even though in that present moment you feel guilty for being there.
Then look at the after effect of that.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you're gonna be at home present with the kids and your cup's only half full, then what good is that, right? But if you go out for a couple of hours and fill your cup and come home with a full cup, like surely that's got to be better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In theory, yes.
In theory. But guilt is a normal human emotion. Yeah, just as nervous, just as anger, if we just label that and just let it be. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, I feel guilt.
Yeah.
Normally, guilt, we put in kind of an emotion box. And then guilt is normally for things that we've done in the past or haven't done in the past. And, I haven't got a magic wand to change the past, and I don't know anyone else who has. So, do you know what I mean? So guilt is normally to do with the past. Not all the time, but normally to do with the past. We can look at guilt differently as well. Yeah, we recognise the feeling of guilt. Yeah, it's a pretty difficult emotion to explain, but we all recognise what the feeling of guilt feels like, and we can learn from that too. Yeah, so instead of going, okay, I have this feeling of guilt that makes me a bad person, basically that's what we're thinking, it's I've got this feeling of guilt, okay, what can I learn from this? So it just engages that logic side of the brain as opposed to the emotional side of the brain. And when we engage the logic side of the brain, what we hope to do is change the way that we behave. We might still feel the emotion, but that might lessen in intensity as time goes on, because we know by giving ourselves, what have I learned from this? Well, 2 hours to myself. Yes, I feel guilty about that because I think I should be with the kids. Self-judgment, perhaps.
100%.
I think I should be with the kids, but actually, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm learning a lot from that. I'm learning how to relax. I get a little bit of benefit of that, and the kids and my family certainly get the benefit from that. So that's what I'm learning. Now, if we engage that logic part, surely that guilt doesn't feel as bad if we're looking at it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to feel a lot of guilt for doing what I did, because I had a hobby that would take me away for the weekends or for many hours at a time. But yeah, like I'm not doing that sort of hobby now, which is consuming a lot of my time. But yeah, for the time that I do take to myself now, I definitely feel a lot better when I come home from that, because it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not there for that time. But then I get home and it's like, okay, I'm home now. Here I am.
Yeah.
And then, I feel a lot better for that. Yeah. So don't be too hard on yourself, mate.
Dude, I'm the hardest. Yeah.
You're good, mate.
I think we're all hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
We all
sure.
have an expectation about kind of where we want to go with things.
Yeah.
And when we don't meet that expectation, that's when we feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
When maybe we just perhaps need to lower that expectation.
That's right.
Very true.
So what would some of the early signs of a man or a female that might be struggling with some mental health issues, but they're not saying anything? Like, what could I do if I see potentially somebody who's struggling, but they aren't really speaking up about it?
Okay, so this is where it differs between some symptoms differ between men and women. Yeah, so when we look at depression, for example, you might find someone that becomes a lot more irritable or a lot more angry with things. That normally happens in the male population rather than the female population. The female population will be more kind of that sadness and that kind of helplessness, hopelessness kind of element, not necessarily the anger. Yeah. So when if we're looking at those kind of things, if we're looking at things like, you notice somebody at work and kind of they haven't brought lunch in for 2 or 3 days, yeah, or they've brought lunch in and they're just kind of picking at it, and then they're normally pretty good eaters, yeah, that could possibly be a sign. Yeah, so we change our eating habits. Our sleep. Yeah, our sleep's a big one too. Our sleep really helps mood management. So when we're not getting great sleep, and we tend not to get great sleep if we're, say, anxious and we're thinking a lot about something that we can't problem solve or we don't know how to, or we're worrying about, then sleep. If someone comes to work or your partner, if your partner's up and down all night, and normally he's a great sleeper. Yeah, he's up and down and he's just a little bit more irritable. Don't just necessarily think that irritability and anger is to do with the lack of sleep. Might be to do with the kids.
Oh, I'm just laughing. Yeah, just laughing because the kids are making noise. I'm not laughing at anything else but that.
Yeah. But I think with that sleep, if your partner isn't getting great sleep and he's normally a great sleeper, like just check in on him. Yeah, just say, hey, what's happening? Can I help with anything? And start to open that conversation. He might go, nah, all good, because we know we're not great at talking. Nah, I'm all good. I've got it. It's like, okay, no worries. Then just keep an eye on that. Or is your partner going to the fridge at midnight snack kind of time? Do you know what I mean?
Guilty.
And that's something that your partner doesn't normally do. Yeah, you're looking for those little things that on their own wouldn't really mean anything. But kind of when you put them together, you go, oh, maybe something's not quite right here.
Yeah.
A bit more snappy at the kids, or, oh, hold on a second, what's going on here? You're not normally like this.
Yeah.
Yeah? So that there's particular things that in isolation might not mean anything. But if there are a few things that are coupling up together, yeah, you might want to open that conversation.
Yeah.
Because men might find it difficult.
That's right.
To open that conversation with you.
That's right.
On the opposite of that, what does good mental health look like?
Okay, good mental health. Right, we have got time to self. Yeah, we've got exercise. Exercise is a huge thing. Yeah, and it comes back, and I get this all the time at the clinic. I don't have time, Rach. I don't have time to exercise. Yeah, and I get it. We've already said we're time poor.
That's right.
But if you can have, and this is just purely for mental health, this isn't for losing weight or fitness or anything like that. If we can just download our favourite podcast,
Real Talk Noble.
download our favourite music, download something that we like listening to, get that stuck in our ears, and go for a walk around the block. That might be 10 minutes, yeah? 10 minutes is better than nothing.
That's right.
We aim from a mental health perspective for 20 minutes. Yep.
But what should your heart rate be at?
Heart rate should be around that 120, 130 a minute, yeah? So when we go for a walk, we've got to get the brisk walk going.
Yep.
Yeah. Or if you've got stairs in your house, go running up and down the stairs 2 or 3 times. That will get that heart rate going. Squats while you're making a cup of tea. Yeah, that will get the heart rate going. Burpees while the kids are in the shower. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get that we're all time poor, but I think that we can probably find little kind of 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there that we could do.
Just quickly, that's amazing. That brings me back to one of the things that from another episode where it's just Ryan was like, you've just got to find those little bits of time
100%.
to implement something, and that's exactly who would have. I just never would have thought to try some of these things while I was making a cuppa.
Well, who,
You know?
like
Not-
we're all guilty of sitting there for 20 minutes just doom
scrolling.
You know,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
literally, you could be like walking around the block doom
Push-ups, sit-ups.
You know?
I've never thought of that.
It's a good point. You say put your phone down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a killer.
If we had a video in our house about and I'm guilty of this too, the amount of time that we just scroll through
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
nothing,
Yeah.
we just scroll through nothing.
Yeah.
That would make me depressed.
We're all kind of, I don't want to do that, but
Yeah,
we're
nah.
all kind of guilty of that, you know? So sometimes when I say prioritize, there are things that we probably can prioritize a little bit better than we perhaps do generally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And social things too, community and social. Yeah, when you say, look, what makes good mental health? Obviously, sleep, diet, and exercise, they're the foundation. But what makes good mental health is that connectivity, whether it's connecting with your family, whether it's connecting with friends, whether it's connecting with a volunteer organisation, a community group, a social group, a support group, a network. It doesn't matter what.
Yeah.
But the social aspect, mental health causes a lot of isolation and feelings of isolation and withdrawal. So being able to have that good support group around you, not just one, but being able to kind of pick and choose those supports that are around you is a pretty good thing for good mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose what we were just talking about there sort of covers like the last couple of questions that we had. But,
Yeah.
I mean, where we, like Braden and I, we're both part of a community because it's Dad's community.
Yeah,
you would have heard about this through Braden. But we get a lot of that connection there. That social connection is key. Like, and I feel like as you get older as a man and you become a father and you get wrapped up in your career and your jobs
Responsibilities,
and real responsibilities and stuff, you lose a lot of that self in the way of your friends, and everybody goes off and does different things, and you kind of find that like people that you had connections with at one point in time, you don't really align anymore. So, you drift apart and stuff like that. So you lose a lot of that connection. But I think, as an adult, it's so much harder to find that connection. But you've got to find it through the things that you enjoy, right? So
your hobbies.
it's kind of like if you want to do something, if you're a dude and you want to knit blankets, go find a knitting club and you'll go meet like-minded people, right? Like it's simple as that.
It is that simple. But going back to what we said at the start, that judgment.
That's right. That's right.
But I totally agree.
Yeah.
If guys want to do knitting all the way to abseiling, it doesn't matter.
That's
and
right.
anything in between.
Yeah.
Go and find that club. Go and find that kind of community where at least you've got that commonality. Because it's really tricky going on your own. Yeah, it's like, I don't want to go on my own, thank you very much.
Yeah, we attend a Friday night barbecue.
Right, okay.
And
At the watermill in Petrie.
Yeah.
Get down there.
Mill. And we have new guys coming all the time because it's an open event to any dads and their kids and stuff like that. And you often hear from some dads that they would have arrived, but they sat in their car and then they might have driven off again. But they might have done that a couple of times, and then they've eventually got the courage to come up.
Good.
And so it's kind of like, because it's just the fear of judgment, right?
Yeah.
And there's definitely no judgment in our circles. And I think, as we get older, like that's something that's all in our head. Like nobody's judging anybody. Like I for one, I don't really care much.
We're too busy judging ourselves.
That's right. That's right. I'm my biggest critique, but my biggest cheerleader as well. So, I think from somebody who has just lived a pretty full life, and I've been around a lot of things and met a lot of good people. I think we're in a position now within society that we're doing a lot better as men. Yeah. I know that 25 years ago, losing mates to suicide and stuff, there was no help for us back then. There was no avenues to get any kind of help. There was no even ask of, hey, are you okay? Do you need some help? But I think now there's a lot more help out there for men, but it's just whether or not men want to take it, right? Yeah.
Well, I think men do want to take it.
Do you find like women accept help more than men? Do you have like more female clients than you do male clients?
Because I think that's that societal kind of, I suppose, pigeonhole.
Yeah.
That people put other people in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, you're right. I've never really thought about it, but now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I probably do have a lot more females than I do males, and I think probably because it's just normal. It's normal for females to talk about it.
That's right.
It's not normal. It should be, but it's not perceived as normal for males to talk about it.
Yeah.
And also, look, before you get to see a psychologist, you've got to go to your GP. So then you've got to explain to your GP first, this is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got to then repeat it, but in more detail, to the psychologist that you see. That's on the first session.
Yeah.
So it can be quite a daunting thing as well.
Yeah.
Which is why I say, potentially for those people who don't reach out to psychologists or counsellors or professional kind of, I suppose, psycho kind of dynamic therapeutic healthcare, it's really important that you get that social circle around you, that social network.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you go, you've got a mate where you go, do you know what? I haven't spoken to you for 18 months. Yeah, but I could really do with a chat with you right now.
That's right.
And I'm giving you a call.
Yeah.
And not think twice about giving them a call.
No.
Yeah, it's like, I haven't spoken to them. Oh, what would they think? And then we just talk ourselves out of it.
Yeah.
And then by talking ourselves out of it means that then potentially we become more isolated.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess if we're rounding it out, the key thing here is we just got to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
We just got to be more open with ourselves and to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we can't talk about it, or we're not at a stage where we want to talk about it, then let's just get some exercise in, hey?
Yeah.
Let's do 10 squats while we're making a cup of tea. Let's just go and get the burpees while the kids are in the shower. Let's just start to redistribute those chemicals in your body that can help you to feel a little bit better. It won't solve it. Yeah. But it could make you feel a little bit better and perhaps a little bit more confident enough to kind of take that next step.
Nice.
There was one question I was going to throw out there.
Go for
What's a final thought from Rachel?
Yeah.
Final thought on men's, women's, just mental health in general, that something that anyone can just quickly take away from this episode.
That I think we just need to talk more about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's just start a conversation about it for no reason. Yeah, let's stop looking at it as a taboo in a sense. I can only talk about this if it's relevant to me. Yeah, everyone will have an opinion on it.
Nice.
You might not agree with that opinion, but that's okay.
That's right.
Let's just start that conversation.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, so I guess for you guys out there, if you are struggling, reach out to your GP
or to a mate. Reach out to anyone that's anyone will listen.
And even reach out to us.
Yeah. 100%.
We're here, and we are here to talk. So thanks so much, Rachel, for coming on.
Thanks, Rachel. Really appreciate having you on.
Thank you for the invite. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for your insight there.